Hello everyone, welcome back to Sewing Machine Rehab. This video is our continuation of a restoration of a Singer 301A. This would also apply to a Singer 301. We are just picking up where we left off. The last time we were together, we removed the bed extension, the hand wheel, and the bobbin winder parts. And today we are going to remove the tension assembly off of the 301, as well as some of the thread guides. And we'll see how long that takes, and maybe we can get a little bit farther, but if not, we'll turn it off and pick it up again later. So your 301's tension can come off in two different ways. It can come off in one piece, or you can take it off piece by piece. And maybe I'll show you both ways. So if we just want to remove the whole tension assembly all at once, I'm going to turn this so you can get a better look into the nose of the machine. So there is a stud that begins, you can see it at the end of the tension assembly, and it runs all the way through the center of the assembly and stops back here inside the nose. Here's a little set screw that once you have the stud situated the way it's supposed to be, you would take this little set screw and tighten it up against the stud. So I will show you how to remove the whole thing, and hopefully the screw isn't stuck. So I'm just loosening this little screw, and I don't know if you can see that or not. There it is. Okay. So I'm just loosening this. I'm not going to take it all the way out just yet, although I will remove it. But when I do that, I should be able to, to actually pull out the whole tension assembly. And it doesn't want to come out. So, oh, here we go. Just needed a little wiggle. So this is the tension assembly. And the reason why I take them off is, if you can see, this has a lot of dirt. Some of it actually could be a little bit of rust on the tension disc, oil that's dripped down onto the stud. And there's probably a nice bit of thread dust in between these discs, which, as the thread is running up through the tension assembly, if these aren't clean, your tension's going to be pretty wonky. So that's how we would take the whole thing off. But I think it would be helpful for you to see how to take it off one piece at a time. And the reason why I say that is you may have your machine 100% back together, you're sewing along, and you just feel like maybe the tension isn't set right. And when I would troubleshoot that, I would actually remove this assembly piece by piece. So that is what we're going to do. Okay, so here's the end of the stud. And it's tempting to just stick a screwdriver in here and start turning, but don't do that. That's not how this one works. So your tension assembly, you have the numbered cap here, will push in. What you want to do is you want to use your fingers to push that in, and then as you've got it pushed back away from this little silver knob here, start twisting that knob counterclockwise until it totally screws off. So this is the last piece that goes on when you're putting the tension assembly on. Then what you'll see is that these other parts will just slide right off the stud. You should, I should also point out, the reason why I had you push that back, there's this little metal nub here that sticks out. And actually, when you're setting your tension, you will set it into one of these little holes in this ring, and it will stay seated there and keep your tension set properly. The next piece that comes off, and I don't know the technical name, it's this little metal, it's not a washer, it has a little finger on it, and the finger points towards you, so you take that off. Then you have this cool little beehive spring, and this spring, it kind of looks like, I always think of a coffee cup, so the coffee cup is right side up so the coffee doesn't spill. It doesn't go on like that. Although some people would argue it doesn't make a difference. That's how it should go. Then we have our little plus and minus disc that tells us, which way we're turning to either tighten or loosen the tension. And then this last piece will kind of pull it all off together and then take it apart because the spring is wrapped around these pieces. And here's where I'm feeling that it's stuck. So I may have to loosen this a little bit. It should just slide off, but because it's pretty gunky, the spring is wanting to stay, it's stuck to the stud. So, okay, now I should be able to pull it off. Nope, it's really stuck. Okay, there, I have it now. So we'll just pretend this stayed in there. So here what we have is the check spring for the tension unit. And I don't know, you can't see down here on the towel, but a big glob of something just fell out, and this is really dirty. It's totally fine. There's no little parts snapped off. So if you get a good look at this spring, on the back side here, there's a little metal arm that kind of drops down inside the spring. If you don't have that, your spring is broken and you need to replace it. But this just needs cleaned up. Here's the rest of the tension system. And let me just see if I can get it apart. We have this piece, which I'll show you how to put it back together, and then our 2 tension discs, and look at that. So imagine these are together and the threads in between them running through the machine, but it's rubbing against all of this. And this is just varnished oil and maybe a little bit of rust that needs to be cleaned off. So even if you are not restoring a machine, truly, you should probably know how to take this tension apart and put it back together just so you can stay on top of maintenance on these discs and stuff. So the way that I would put this back on is I would put the tension disc, the, I guess the cupped out sides together, and then I would set this piece with the finger pointing towards the machine and up, and then I would take this spring and I would slide those 3 pieces in between this gap here, right here, like this, and then I would slide it onto the tension stud, and this little finger here would line up and go inside this. There's a little metal hole right there. And then we would put the other parts on. But I'm not going to do that. Now, last piece is the tension stud. And this goes into the machine, and you always want to have this little gap here pointing, it goes horizontally. It doesn't go vertically. but inside of it, and I'm going to give it a tap. Since it's so gunky, it might need a little help. There's there's a little tension releasing pin, and you can sort of see it right now in there, but I might need to find a toothpick or something to get it to come all the way out. So since it's so stuck, it can't really do its job as far as keeping the tension even and working properly. And it's just going to take a little bit of coaxing to get that pin out. Okay, old sewing needle. I can push that in there. There we go. So this is the tension pin that sits inside the stud. And when it's inside the stud, this little flat end, if you see how there's a flat end, points out towards you. And every time you raise and lower your presser foot, this little stud is just sticking slightly out the back. And there's a little mechanism on the inside of the nose of the machine, a little spring. When you raise your presser foot up, sorry about that, it pushes this spring in and it takes the tension off the disc. And then when you put your presser foot back down, the tension is pushed back up against this stud, and it's ready for the next time that you need to raise your presser foot and have the tension taken off of the thread. So all of these parts need cleaned, and I would just bag them up. You thankfully don't have any tiny little screws to lose with this tension assembly, which isn't true if you're working on like a one of the 400 series. They changed the tension, and there were some teeny tiny little screws that I always get so nervous that I'm going to lose. And I love the tension unit on the 301s because I just don't have that one teeny tiny little screw. So I have all my tension in a bag. What I'm going to do is I'm going to also remove these 2 thread guards here and the 2 thread guards here on the needle. Okay, I am going to interrupt the audio on this video for just a moment because the thread guide there that I was touching right now, I was trying to explain to you how it works with setting the stroke and tension of the check spring. And basically that little knob there that I was touching that sticks out, it keeps the thread at the right tension or slack when the needle moves up and down. So when it's time to set the tension, I will also show you how to set the stroke. And I'll go back to the original audio, but I think I did a pretty poor job of explaining it the first time around, and it would have been very confusing. So I thought it'd be a good idea to pop in and explain this particular thread guide and why the little slot the screw goes in is oblong. That's just so you can adjust the stroke and tension. So I'm just going to finish this with my fingers. And this, it's not as stuck as I thought. So I'm going to take this little screw and this little thread guide, and I'm actually just putting it in with my tension. It doesn't match any other screws that are going in there, so I'll know where it goes. And then the same with this thread guide. And it's just easier to clean the machine and polish the body of the machine if you take these off. So we'll just get this little screw off. It's a little longer than I remember. Okay, so that just comes off and you can bag it up. And then last, we will go ahead and remove these 2 thread guides. So you may need to spin your machine around a little bit. In fact, if you wanted to, you could, if you were doing this at home and you didn't have a camera in the way, you could even turn it like that and get to them. And maybe I can do that this way today too. So all these screws that I have taken off so far are left to loosen. And I'm going to stick with a smaller screwdriver to get to these 2 screws. And the reason why is because you don't have a lot of clearance right here. Plus, they are a smaller slot, so that will work for you. So just spin them both out. And this is where a magnetic tip comes very quite in handy. Let me get this other one too. Sorry, I'm probably not giving you the best view, but we'll just spin these 2 off. And when you go to put them back on, you may find that turning your machine like this is the easiest way to get them off. And they just kind of slide down this little bushing here and then off of the needle bar. So, and these can be cleaned too. They're always dirty because oil drips down from people oiling the needle bar and it gets onto these screws. So you'll be able to give them a good cleaning before you put them back. Okay, so we have removed the tension and the thread guides. And before we start to take off this needle bar, let's remove the needle bar clamp, or the needle clamp, sorry. Oh, you know what? Scratch that. We have one more little part to remove. It is the set screw for the tension. Sorry, got a little bit ahead of myself. So I'm just going to go ahead and spin this all the way out, and I will put it with the tension parts because there's no other set screw that I can confuse it with in that bag. And it is surprisingly long, but it goes quite a distance into the machine before it presses up against the little post that sticks out. So, and you'll see what it looks like. It's obvious. The end that doesn't have any threads goes in, and that's what will press up against the post. So this can also go there. All right. So now we're going to remove the needle clamp. And that little part, I spun the machine around. So when we take the needle out and put it back in, we're always taking this little sort of thumb screw thing to clamp the needle tight. Let's go ahead and just remove it and set it aside. And then to remove the actual piece itself, you just need a little screwdriver. It's left to loosen. And keep your hands underneath it if you can, because the parts are tiny. And again, this is why I like to work on a towel. If I do drop something small, it typically won't bounce or roll off the towel into the abyss on the floor. So here is the little screw that you will need to take out, and it has a funny little button on the back which fits perfectly into a hole that's cut into the needle bar. Once you do that, you should be able to just wiggle this clamp and gently pull down, and it will come off. Now, there is a piece up inside this clamp. It is the final thread guide for your thread before it goes through the needle. And it's a jib, and it fits up inside this needle clamp like this, and then kind of back into a little hole that you'll see. And so when I go to put this back on, it's almost impossible to put it on with this little jib. And I have found the best way is I tip the machine up on the hand wheel end, and then I can slide it onto the needle like this instead of trying to do this and the jib keeps falling out of place. So this will just wiggle it back apart. I'll clean all these, get a nice old toothbrush, get all this nasty grease and oil off, and it will be ready to put back on the machine. So now I have 4 parts for the needle bar. I have this part of the needle clamp, the little jib, this little thumb screw, and this little tiny screw, which is going to, that little metal nub's going to rest in this little metal hole you see right here. So I'm going to set those aside and look at removing the actual needle bar. And maybe I'll need to move back a little bit here, raise this up so you can see. So what holds your needle bar in your machine is a clamping screw, and it's right here. And so all you need to do first is to just loosen the screw, and I can switch back to my bigger screwdriver. And it might be a little snug, and this is another one that if it doesn't come out, spray it with oil. I'm going to push this back so I can get a better grip. Get my needle or my screwdriver in the slot. It's turning. It's just really sticky. So I'm going to twist this. I won't take it all the way out yet. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of take my needle bar, because I've released the pressure of this clamping screw. I'm just going to twist and turn my needle bar around. So it goes through this clamp, down through this bushing, which we don't remove this big bushing, but we do flush it out really well and clean it out. So if I can get it twisting, then I will just twist and sort of pull down a little bit until I get it out of the clamp. There we go. This clamp should just slide right out of this little metal arm back here. Okay, so this is the clamp that the needle goes into, and it goes into this little arm that's part of the thread take-up system right here. I don't know if it's going to focus for you, but right now I'm just going to set it aside. I'll go ahead and remove this screw so I can clean every part. So here's your little screw and the clamp for the needle bar. Now I'll go ahead and push it up and pull it right out of the bushing. And here is your needle bar. So you can see that over the years, it has collected quite a lovely buildup of dirt and grease and oil and dust. And this is just really yucky. So we'll clean it up. We'll make sure to get a brush into this little groove here and get all that gunk out. And also clean down inside this hole. And put it back on. So I think that's a good place to stop. When we come back, we will go ahead and remove the presser bar system, and maybe we'll get to this thread take-up as well. So anyway, I hope you're learning something new. I appreciate you checking back. Please follow along with us, and if you missed the first couple videos, go back and watch them, and I will see you very soon. Bye.